Hi, and welcome to the final section. I can't believe we're finished already of the Telegraph Food and Drink Festival. I'm Diana Henry. I'm one of the Telegraph's food writers, and we're going to be talking to Yotam Ottolenghi. Hold on to your excitement there. And Ixta Belfrage, who's his co-author on his latest book, Flavour. Can you tell us what you're going to do? What recipe you're going to do?
Ixta and I are going to cook the chaat masala potatoes with yogurt and tamarind. Which is consists of a base of Greek yogurt, some roasted potatoes, and then a quick coriander chutney, which is literally just coriander and chili bits together with a bit of lime juice, and tamarind drizzle, again with chaat masala, and some onions and chilies to finish. So it's a kind of
it's one of those things that you do so brilliantly, which are different components, but each one of which is quite simple. But when you put them together, it makes something great.
Yeah.
We've got people, I have to tell you, I've got hello from County Down in Northern Ireland, hello from New York, hello from South Wales, hello from Melbourne. So there's people joining from all over. I like somebody's joining from Saintfield. Yotam actually he's got Northern Ireland connections, which I feel very glad about because he's got elections over there. That's nice.
I just want to say, can you see this train?
Yes.
That's where the train goes over our heads.
Oh, okay. So the noise we'll hear is the rumblings every so often. Fine, yeah. We'll ignore them if you can ignore them.
We're in a Camden test kitchen and we're under a lovely railway arch. And
this is the famous Ottolenghi test kitchen, which I've always been so curious about. And it kind of evolved, didn't it? It wasn't there from the word go when you started writing.
No, it started about 8 years ago. At the beginning, I was doing most of the work or all of the work myself from home, and then the test kitchen opened and it had become less of a me thing and an us thing. And Ixta is the latest co-author, but as you know, Diana, there's been other co-authors, and
you've got Helen, and you've got Noor, and you've got Tara. So you have a whole team, all of women, Yotam.
All of women, yeah. Well, no, over the years there's Sammy still involved somehow, and we had Scully, but mostly women, yeah.
Why is that?
A really good question. I think it's got to do with cooking for home cooks, which is what the test kitchen is all about. We're not testing recipes for the restaurants here. We're testing recipes for home cooks. And I just think that the whole state of mind cooking is not about impressing. It's about doing something a bit more practical and nurturing and suited to the home. And I think that's just like maybe women are more attracted to that, or maybe it's not the training that comes with a traditional chef's training. That's the difference.
So it's better if they haven't been trained in the rigors of a professional kitchen.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to let you two. I'm going to keep talking to you, but I'm going to let you two start getting on the recipe.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. So we hope that you parboiled your potatoes. We've sliced them about 1 centimeter thick, and we parboiled them. Let the water come to a boil. Boil them for about 6 minutes, so they're soft, but they should still be holding their shape. And we're going to toss them with about 2 tablespoons of oil. So I'm not going to measure that, but about that much.
And what kind of potatoes? There would be waxy potatoes?
We've got waxy baby new potatoes here. So we say baby new potatoes, but actually it's if you can get sort of larger babies.
All sizes of baby potatoes these days.
Larger babies are preferable for this recipe, so you can slice them easily 1 centimeter thick. So we've got large babies here, and we're going to add turmeric, salt, and chaat masala spices. So full disclosure, we couldn't actually get chaat masala today, so we're using garam masala, which is a little bit less sour.
Do you make up your own mixtures for those, the chaat masala and the garam masala, or do you buy them? Tell us honestly.
We buy those. You absolutely can make your own, but these are blends, Bart's blends. But absolutely make your own if you've got the time, and toast them. So mix these potatoes really well. You want to make sure that they're all absolutely nicely coated. And you know what? This isn't working.
Get your hands in there. What is the best way? It's always the best way. Same with salads.
And I want to say something about the spice mixes. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's really important. It's really cool to make your own spice mixes, but also It's fine to get the mixes from a supermarket, if you got to buy a good brand, only because it saves you time. And if you can get this dish on if the dilemma is whether to cook this or not, if you're going to have to make a spice mix,
I think that's always the thing to say. It's if you wouldn't cook this dish at all, but you can take this shortcut, and make the dish.
You can't afford to be purists. You know, this is something that is good and delicious, and it's really.
We'll just show you how we've sort of spread them out. So that's quite important. Don't just sort of lump them on the tray and stick it in the oven. Do sort of spread them out, because the more they're spread out on the tray, the better
color. Like single layer cooking thing, because they'll steam as well if they're on top of each other. So they got to roast.
And if you've seen that they're really beautiful golden brown.
Someone had said, did you slice the potatoes before you cook them? I'm assuming not.
Yes, we sliced them before.
Okay, so you slice them and then you cook them for 6 minutes. Right, there we are.
So cold water, bring to the boil, and then 6 minutes.
In this book, in Flavour, which is your new book that you've both written together, you have split the notion of flavour up into 3 bits, all beginning with P. So it's process, produce, and pairing. And did you think from that point, or did you come up with the dishes and then work backwards, if you know what I mean?
It actually came a bit later. So essentially, the book started by when Ixta and I. Well, it started when we decided to do a book which is focused on vegetables, and which is the 3rd in the series in the Plenty More and Now Flavor series. And we came up with a group with recipes, and we looked at them, and we thought, like, okay, what are the chapter headings here? And I know, Diana, you write books, and you know that chapters look quite important to the writer, but probably less important to the reader, that picks the recipes that they like. But for us, it was very important just for the work, you know, just to get an idea of what we're doing. So we had really kind of quite inconsistent headings. We had one chapter about onions and garlic, another chapter about browning, another chapter about chili heat, and it just didn't make sense because they were all such different categories. And then Tara, incredible Tara, was looking into it, and we asked her, Tara, could you figure this out for us? What are we doing here? Because she's so good at kind of, you know, arranging things and thinking things out, and she told Ixta, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
About the doctor's appointment.
Yeah, so Tara was so actually going back, we had until this point making the book, we've been sort of just calling the book P3 because we didn't have a name for it, and P3 was our way. It's sort of plenty more, and then whatever this book was going to be called, so we called it P3. And Tara told us that one day we'd given her the manuscript, and she was in a hospital, a doctor's appointment, and literally in the middle of her appointment, it suddenly dawned on her that the book obviously should be divided into 3 Ps, and those were process, pairing, and produce. So it incredibly, we went from calling the book just as a joke P3 to realizing that actually the 3 categories in this book were 3 Ps.
It's very well thought out, I think, so actually. Well, because those are the things you do have to think about. I always think pairing is the one that comes first to me. It's what you put things with, because I'm always looking for contrast, and then another contrast after that. So I don't know how do things come to you too? I mean, I know that you go in, Ixta, and you just work on whatever you want to work on in the test kit. Do you make yourself sit down and think about flavors and dishes, or do things just come to you?
I think we always say this, that when it comes to coming up with recipes, that the way that we do it, there's absolutely sort of no rules about a certain way of doing it. And sometimes we'll sit down together and brainstorm and come up with ideas for recipes. Those recipes might be based on a season or on a column title that we've already thought of. Sometimes we'll look in the fridge at the end of the week and see, you know, on a Friday morning we do a clear out of the test kit from fridge. Maybe on Friday morning we might look in the fridge, see what's left, and just come up with a recipe based on that. Yeah, like I said, sometimes it's seasonal, sometimes it's based on, you know, Yotam might have gone to a great restaurant the night before and come in and said, I had this great blah, 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 let's do our own version of it. So there is There is no one way of coming up with.
Because when we talked Yotam, not that long after you had the Guardian column, actually, when you started that, which is a long time ago now, you said, oh, you were a bit worried about the fact that it was just going to be vegetables, which is just extraordinary when you think now that you've completely changed, not just the way we eat vegetables, but even the way we think about them. I mean, I have to come up with ideas all the time. And I will see something, oh, I would never have thought of that, but something you've done, just a tiny thing in one recipe maybe. But was it hard? Did you have to get your head into that place where you had to look at vegetables very differently? Because, you know, the thing about protein, the thing about meat was it was always kind of that the meat gave you the flavor. So that was the one thing on the plate. But vegetables, it seems to me, although I love cooking them, they're harder. They are harder.
Definitely harder. I mean, it's something that both Ixta and I talk about quite a lot now, how much more difficult it is to inject vegetables with flavor. And I think that the theoretical parts of the book, you know, the 3 Ps, the chapter opening, preparing for produce and for process, are actually there to explain how a wonderful vegetable dish comes about. So it's not as intuitive or as clearly understood as meat or fish, because you take a good cut of meat and you season it well and you put it on the pan and you've got your meal sorted. But vegetables are just not like that.
Although you probably had more of a sense of vegetable cookery than most British people, actually, when you think of it, because it was a big part. I mean, we just used to boil them here. In the Middle East, you do things with them, and you too, you had more of a kind of vegetable cooking background, I think, than most people here. So probably both your cultures fed into that.
I think it helped. I mean, Ixta and I both come from a kind of a mixed bag of cultures, with, you know, and Ixta can talk about hers, but from my perspective, it is important to mix and match, because there is really exciting things that are happening in other parts of the world that we can learn so much from. And that's another thing that this book has in abundance, and I've had in all my books, is those kind of cross-cultural mixes within dishes, you know, that kind of, we don't want to use the F word, and I mean fusion. That has had such a bad rep over many, many years, I guess since the late 1990s, and then for about a decade, where people did horror things to food in the name of just
without thinking about the effect, actually.
But then actually there is something to be said, and Ixta and I are both firm believer in that, of cultural cross-cultural cross-pollinations. And, you know, in this book, we've got so many of those. Just to name a few, the za'atar cacio e pepe, or the fusion caponata, you know, Berber ratatouille, you know, things that are just, you know, we take a concept from one culture and mix it with another. We tell the story of how this came about. We don't try to erase history or erase the story. On the contrary, we love to tell the story and why it makes it.
No, Ixta told me about a dish she does, and I just went, "What?" It's the lasagna you do with the prawns, and there's a coconut in it, Ixta, and also then a Mexican chilies.
No coconut in that one, but yeah, no, it's a prawn and habanero lasagna with a sort of habanero extra.
Because you love Chinese flavors, don't you?
I mean, we both love Chinese flavors, and there's actually, I think you can probably tell throughout this book, there's a lot of influence from China, mainly northern China, in the ingredients we use, like in the fusion caponata, in the figs, which are roasted in Shaoxing wine and soy sauce. What else have we got in there? That's
kind of fusion.
The turnip cake.
The turnip cake.
Yeah.
I guess the Brussels sprouts.
Oh yeah, the Brussels sprouts that are sitting in sort of bar.
Do you want to tell about the Brussels sprout while I make the coriander chutney, which involves taking the coriander. I just picked coriander and some green chili, very roughly chopped. I added some lime juice, there's salt and a bit of water, and I'm just going to put it in the food processor.
Sorry.
What can you do, really?
So the Brussels sprouts. So I think a lot of people listen to Brussels sprouts or have only had.
Yeah.
You are.
I have to think hard about them every year. I really do.
Well, I hope you try our Brussels sprouts because they might win you over. We've got, so they're roasted on a really high temperature, and then they get added to this tray, which is a bath full of ingredients that have been sitting in a bath of Chasing wine and soy sauce. We've got chestnuts in there and shallots and grapes, and then those roasted, charred Brussels sprouts get mixed in with all of those flavors, and then the whole dish is topped off with pickled green chilies, which rice vinegar.
Rice vinegar is fantastic, isn't it? Because it's just not that acidic, but it gives you enough just to have a bit there. I think rice vinegar is such a great. Yeah,
I love rice vinegar.
It's a little, because it's so non-acidic, and Scandinavian vinegar, the one they use there, is quite like it as well. Very low in acid.
I much prefer rice vinegar to white wine vinegar. It's funny how these things change. I did a cook along yesterday from Flavor, the tamales, and in that recipe there's a sub recipe for pickled onions, where we use lime skin and white wine vinegar. And when I was looking through the recipe, I was like, why did we use white wine vinegar? Rice vinegar is so much better. It's funny how, I'm sure Diana, you write a recipe and you think it's as good as it can be, and then you cook it again, or it gets published, and then you make it again. You think, oh,
I know I do that all the time.
I add that. And I don't think I would ever use white wine vinegar. So that's just a total segue tangent. But
about the whole kind of cross-cultural thing, do you worry at all about cultural appropriation? Taking things that aren't yours and then using it in some way that's different? Or do you feel it's fine as long as you say where this comes from, where a dish springs from?
Yeah, I think we're both really aware of the issues around it. But I think we're both, we both want to celebrate all these cultures and celebrate how well they can work together. And I think we often say that as long as you do this in a considerate way and reference what you're inspired by, the cultures you're inspired by, or the chefs that you're inspired by, and you do it, you don't throw things on a plate without thinking about it. You take these ingredients and you think about why they work together. And if you do it in a considerate way, then I think we love doing it. I can't imagine. I can't see what the landscape of cooking would be like if we were only allowed to cook the things of our heritage. It would just be quite boring.
Totally boring. I think the other thing is that we're just doing something that's been done throughout history. So it would be terribly damaging to development of food culture if everybody just stopped cooking other people.
I would be in a terrible state because I've only got potatoes, actually. So I don't know. That would be the end of my food writing career.
Wouldn't be allowed to put any tamarind or chaat masala. Nothing. Maybe yogurt. Would you be allowed yogurt?
No, I'd be allowed buttermilk and potatoes and scallions, and that's about it. Tell me, Ixta, about you getting this job, because you didn't really have, I don't want to say any proper training. I know you've cooked your whole life. You really love food, but how did you end up working for Yotam?
Well, I've used this phrase many times, but I always say that it was a case of being in the right place at the right time. And I do have to say that because a lot of people ask me for advice on how to get a job like this. And I always say, well, I can't give you much advice on that because it was just a case of being in the right place at the right time. But like you, I didn't start off cooking. I've always been obsessed with food and always been cooking since I could hold a knife, really. But it took me a long time to realize that should be my career. And when I did realize, I thought I didn't want to go to culinary school, and I didn't think I wanted to work in restaurants. So I had my own little market stall for a while, and I started a little catering thing, and I sort of was floundering around, not knowing what I was doing, and realized I need to get some proper experience, and applied for lots of different restaurant jobs. And I just, at that point, was feeling very hopeless because I quit lots of jobs and lots of degrees, and I didn't think any restaurant would give me I had no experience. But Noppy did give me a chance, and I worked there. I sort of cut my teeth there, although I was
going to say, were you not terrified? I'd be terrified to work in the restaurant kitchen now.
tried, and I have to say things have come in the last few years. I worked there about 5 years ago now, and things have changed a lot in the sense. I was pretty much the only girl there at the time. There was about 15 boys, and I found that quite funny. But that's always changing, and we've got our executive chef Calvin is an incredible guy who's making sure that there's always a good balance of girls in the kitchen, and I think that's really important. But it was hard, and I didn't know what I was doing, and I've never worked. You have to be really tough to work in a restaurant environment, and I don't think I was tough enough. And I had no experience. But a job at the test kitchen came up, and funnily enough,
Ixta's talent was spotted by Cornelia, our general manager, and she.
Well, I mean, I don't know what talent she spotted, because I was very talented in dropping desserts and screwing up ice creams, but not a lot of talents I had. They were obvious to Cornelia, but Cornelia is an extremely perceptive person, so she must have sort of seen behind.
Did you have to cook for Yotam then?
No, I never even, I mean.
Well, you came for a test.
I came for a trial, but it was Esme and Sarah who I did the trial with, and they just.
And then it took
Why Yotam?
Yeah,
Why did you take Ixta straight away?
Well, I think. I mean, now you know that this is somewhere where it's about the personal chemistry between the members of the team. It's about people that actually know how to cook, and it's not necessarily about their ego. It's about being really good at what they're doing and focusing on the food. And Ixta was just fitted in perfectly, and she, apart from the talent and the there is a real curiosity about mixing things up and trying new things, and that's what this test kitchen is all about, because it's not about perfecting familiar recipes. There's other chefs and recipe writers that do that. We're trying to discover new things all the time. And it's not necessarily about ingredients. Often, like we said at the beginning, it's about combining things together. So that takes a particular kind of person to be able to do these kind of mixes, and that's what Ixta does so well. And that's why she's here, not just because she was the right person in the right place, just because. But
I do have to say there was an element of that.
And I just want to say something about the actual cooking. So I just blitzed together the coriander, the chili, and the lime juice, and that's the with a bit of oil, and that's the. So
is there olive oil in that, or what kind of oil did you use?
Olive oil. It's about 4 tablespoons of olive oil, so that's the texture.
And red and green chilies, or just green for this?
It's just green, fresh green, mild, and sort of medium heat chili, and it's a quick condiment that is so easy to make, and it's so good.
Yeah, actually, both the coriander salsa and the tamarind sauce, which we're going to make soon, are in one of our favorite sections of the book, which is, if you turn to the back of the book, if you have it, we've got a little section called flavor bombs, and you can see a picture of lots of flavor bombs in jars. It's condiments, oils, salsas, and sauces, and they're sort of all the sub recipes from the main recipes in the book. And the idea is there that you can actually, if you don't have time, obviously we'd love you to make all the recipes in the book, but if you don't have time to make those recipes, if you just make some of those oils or some of those salsas or some of those sauces or marinades and keep them in your fridge or in your cupboard, then we're all working from home. Well, not all of us, but a lot of us are working from home these days, and we need quick meals that are full of flavor. And if you make some of these sauces and salsas and oils, you've got a quick, delicious meal.
What did you use the coriander salsa for? What other things?
Well, I mean, it's a fantastic condiment for fried tofu or grilled prawns, or I could even put it on rice, or
even like on roasted vegetables. I mean, like these potatoes, like any roast vegetables, and people, talking about vegetables, like that it's hard to infuse them with that. If you roasted something like a sweet potato, or we're going into autumn now, or pumpkin, and spoon that on top as soon as it comes out, let it cool a bit, and then toss it together. That's just because you've got freshness, and you've got heat, and you've got the coriander flavor. So that is the kind of thing that you've got sitting in your fridge, and you can use it.
So tell me about the
left,
tamarind
right, and center.
going in as well.
Okay, let's talk about the tamarind. So this is so just in terms of what we use. So there's all sorts of products in the market, and it's quite important to. So there is the tamarind. There's really good tamarind pastes that you can get, and all they've got is tamarind. But there's also all sorts of awful things, and you just know by trying when it's I don't even know what they're called, but some supermarkets have their own brand, which is literally, it's mostly citric acid and very little tamarind. So if you get like one of the Thai brands, normally you're in a good position. Or you can extract it from the fruit, which is actually not that much work. You just add a bit of water, mix it up, warm water, and then pass it through a sieve. But it doesn't have the degree of concentration that you get from the stuff that comes in plastic tubs, or bottles. So then you want to use it.
Do you use that for sweet dishes as well as savoury tamarind?
Yes, the beautiful thing about tamarind is it's got this natural sweetness and light sweetness and a lot of acidity, so it can go both ways. And talking about the 3 Ps, this one is in pairing and in acidity. So we've got acidity coming here from 3 directions. We've got acidity from the lime juice, we've got acidity from the tamarind, and we've got acidity from the yogurt. And often in the book, when we talk about pairing, it's not just about one thing doing the work. It's about it's a concert of things that give you acidity, whether it or sweetness or chili heat, and in many of and then I'm sure you do the same, Dan, in your recipes. When you've got acidity coming in your direction from 3 different sources, it's so much more of an interesting experience. You know, it's like
different kinds of acidity. Yeah.
Much of the book is about those experiences that are really interesting, just because there's a lot going on. And the onion on the cover kind of tells it all, because it's all those layers. And those are the layers we talked about.
Someone has said, Millie Stapley has said, we've got a block of hard tamarind. Can you use that?
Absolutely, yeah. So that's what Yotam was saying before. If you get the block of hard tamarind, all you need to do is get a piece, sort of maybe a quarter of the block, pour some boiling hot water over that, and then just let the block sit in that water and soften. And after about 20 minutes, you can then put all of that through a sieve and then push the tamarind through the sieve. You'll be left with the pips and the seeds and all the paste that comes through the other end with that water that you've added will become a tamarind paste. So you don't want to sort of totally submerge the block with water, because then your paste will be quite watery. But if you put just enough hot water to cover it, you're going to get a nice, a really nice.
Anna Grayson has asked if there's an equivalent ingredient that would work instead of the tamarind if you couldn't get that.
Good question. Another ingredient of the tamarind. Well,
I think what you could do is take a small amount of pomegranate molasses, or you can do a bit of date syrup with extra lime juice to give it a taste. So you want a tiny bit of sweetness, because tamarind.
Someone has just popped up on the screen actually to say that they've used white miso in this dish instead of tamarind.
It's a different thing. I don't think that. No, but it could have.
I'm sure it would still be delicious. Yeah. The miso is kind of going to give you sweetness, umami, and saltiness, whereas the tamarind is giving you sweet acidity. But I really don't see why miso would work.
You would use it, for goodness sake. You would you would do anything if it worked, so that would be fine.
Extra acidity, some extra lime juice.
Or perhaps rice vinegar.
So how are the potatoes? Are they nearly ready now?
What they look like at the moment. So we've had them in for, we've got 11 minutes left in there, so we'll just show you what they look like at this point.
I just get a little stir halfway through.
So they're already looking really nice and golden, but we're going to take them even further until they're really nice and browned. And then, so if we want to move on to the tamarind, the sweet tamarind dressing next. So we've got that tamarind paste or miso if you're using it. Some of that chaat masala, we're actually using garam masala because we couldn't get chaat masala. But if you can't get chaat masala, use something like garam masala or use a mixture of a few different sweet spices and some curry powder. That will also work well. And then we're just going to add some sugar because this is where most of the sweetness is coming from. And then about 1.5, well, I don't need most of this, about 1.5 teaspoons.
And is that just caster sugar that you use, just regular sugar?
Regular caster sugar, yeah.
But you can use anything sweet.
Yeah, use brown sugar or maple syrup or honey would even work.
It's just not to add an extra complicated ingredients. We use caster sugar, but there's so much flavor and acidity here that you can replace with anything sweet. Yeah.
And then if you haven't yet, probably would be a good time to toast your spices, your seeds now. So we've got nigella seeds, and nigella seeds are actually also known as onion seeds. Are they actually the seeds of onions?
Black onion seeds.
Black onion seeds.
That's a very good question.
I'm not actually sure. I think I need to look that up.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Someone can tweet or tell us.
Yeah, if anyone could message in to tell us whether black onion seeds are actually from an onion.
And also we would love to see the picture of this with the miso.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
We would love to see that. So we've got we've already toasted our coriander seeds and onion and nigella seeds or black onion
coriander, nigella seeds. What else? Okay.
Just those two things. In terms of spices, we've got those two.
I hear it again. Nigella seeds are the things I can never explain to someone else what they taste like. Do you know? Can you tell?
First of all, it's such particular thing that you can't explain it. I mean,
it's a lot for me. It's a lot to do with texture.
It's not hard.
It's very, very crunchy, slightly bitter, and a little bit savory.
I find it bitter, cuminy, and I find it also there's.
Rose Windeller has popped up here on my screen saying they come from buttercups, which I never knew at all. I think they do come from. I do think they come from a flower, but I didn't know that it was buttercup. I need to check that. Oh, Danielle Ellis says nigella seeds are called love in a mist, and that's where they come from. Yeah, it's a blue flower, which actually I think the nigella actually likes a lot. Funny enough, beautiful blue flowers.
Also called Colonji. Yeah, I've seen that on some packaging in the past. And I have to say that another thing talking about nigella seeds, it's important not to put too much because it's got like that quite a bit of bitterness going on. So if it's not sesame seeds, you can't do it by
Affect the flavor.
As liberally as that, you need to be a bit careful when you add it.
Someone else is asking what you would serve this dish with.
Well, that's a very good question. I guess it depends on the context. It would obviously be really delicious with a roast chicken, but if you're going with a vegetable meal, it's kind of because protein is very easy to put in the middle of the table and sort of surround with vegetables. It's harder to come up with a meal when you're just cooking vegetables. So
I think it's really difficult, actually, especially because yours and Yotam's are so super full of flavor. It's like, what am I going to put with this that will not counteract the other one in a kind of negative way? You have to think about it carefully, I think.
When you're putting different vegetable dishes together that have lots of flavor, you just have to embrace the flavor.
Embrace the own
flavor. About that.
I think this could, so because the flavors are kind of Indian, Middle Eastern, I think if you could do a spread and let's say make like something with like burnt aubergine, like from the Babaganese family, that would be really nice. A tomato salad, and then maybe something a bit starchy, like a rice salad, like a jajja or fish curry or something like that. That would be a wonderful mixture of. It's quite a lot of work, but even that by itself. And for light supper with something green or is perfectly fine.
So I think the only other thing that we've got left to do cooking wise, well, actually it's not cooking, but slicing onions. I mean, whilst you're cooking at home, if you haven't done it yet, slice your onions and slice your chilies, and that's it's a really quick quick, simple recipe,
Yeah.
which is
And
full of flavour.
you
You'll
don't do
find out
any
soon.
kind of pickling, light pickling of the red onions, no.
No,
There's
you
so
don't
much
really,
else going
because
on.
there's so much acidity coming
Yeah.
through. You don't really need to. You actually kind of want that pure onion flavour.
And the onion, red onion is not such a, normally I find it quite, relatively mild for this particular purpose. And like Ixta said, it's that acidity that really, really works well. But if you are averse to eating raw onion or raw chili, bit of vinegar or lime juice, kind of
Just
bit
leave
of
it
salt,
for like
just
50
leave it
minutes.
there
No,
to lose
I
it.
love that. Someone has said, Hannah Wilson has said, are the toasted spices la peau or crunch?
Sorry, I missed that one.
The spices, we've left the spices whole because, again, when we use spices, it's not just about the flavour, although that's very important. It's also about the texture. So in this context, we want them to be really crunchy. So for this recipe, leave them whole. For a lot of other recipes, maybe if you're making like a ratatouille or something like that, you might want to crush them. But for this recipe, we really want that bite.
Jessica Flynn, what are your favourite recipes in the book? Each of you.
What are the favorite recipes in the book?
Yeah, I mean that changes every few days. Right now,
Every time we're being asked a question, we think of something else, just because it's a bit like what you feel like when you wake up in the morning, isn't it? Like sometimes you feel like one thing, sometimes you feel like something else.
My favorite is probably the mushrooms. I like currently the one I've been talking about all day. I saw a wonderful picture of it on Instagram. Is the tangerine and ancho chili flan, which I really want to make soon again. Yotam?
My absolute favorite in the book. I guess it has to be maybe one of the celeriac.
You love celeriac, don't you?
Celeriac. And I don't know what it is. I just think it's such a great thing. It's for me, it's an underused ingredient. It's sophisticated, but it actually can give you so much flavor. So we have 3 recipes in the book that are derivatives of the whole head of celeriac that's roasted in the oven for 3 hours, and it's pretty incredible. So the one that I love the most has got this celeriac that has been roasted, cut into wedges, then roasted again for extra color, and then served with like a quick sweet chili sauce with garlic and fresh chilies, and topped with a quick pickled celeriac. So you've got celeriac that's cooked.
Yeah, I looked at that one. It's in my head, it's taking things from very, very different cultures, which I always find hard. I think of celeriac as so British, and then you put it with something which is really quite Asian. And I can't imagine. I'll have to make that, because quite often you might do the same thing, but I'm sure you do it in a broader way than me. When you think of a dish, you can taste it in your head quite often before you make it. But that one, I'm struggling with how that would taste in the end. So that's interesting.
I urge you to try.
I actually missed what recipe you're talking about.
No, the celeriac.
Oh right, yeah.
Sweet chili dressing.
Oh yeah, no, that is.
I urge you to try it, because I think it really is. It's because it's just so wonderfully, contrasted. The sweetness of the celeriac and slow cook versus the sharpness, the acidity of that pickle with the celery and the celeriac. It's just such a nice.
It is very herbal celeriac. That's the thing. It kind of like you can bring that to the fore much more by doing other things to it, I think.
Yeah, totally. How are we doing on this?
So actually, we can probably start plating. There's a couple of. Do you want to talk about the art of plating?
The art of plating.
I mean, you're most. I mean, apart from revolutionising the vegetable world, the art of plating is.
Because you thought a lot about that when you opened the very first Ottolenghi. Actually, it was salads were going to be prominent, and it was how visual and beautiful they were that was important, and what made Ottolenghi popular, I think, before anyone had ever tasted anything.
Yeah. So I guess what it is that when Sami and I were creating the Ottolenghi display, one of the things that was going on in the back of our minds is the kind of the Middle Eastern market experience, where this food just grabs you, and that's what this was about. I don't think we knew that that was the motivation, but that was the underlying motivation. So we spent a lot of time thinking about platters and how to create height and how to contrast a dish with a plate that it sits on. And so I think a lot about how I bring food to the table, because I think it's just so important that it's just, people eat with their eyes. That's a cliche, but it's absolutely true. And I tell you how I know that. I know that because I can look at the bottom line at the till at the end of the day, and I know that if the food looked good, people just bought more of it. And it's that is really the case. So plating, the art of plating, I think is important. And I love doing it, but I also think that it's something to cherish, really.
So I've just taken the potatoes out, and they look like this. They're incredibly golden brown, super crispy, and we're just gonna leave those to cool on the side while Yotam talks us through the plating experience, because we've got loads of layers and flavors and colors here.
Do you think we don't think about it enough when we're cooking at home, how we present food?
I want to say one thing about this. Another thing is that, one of the things that I think a lot is about, like, not mixing up things, because that's what this is about. It's about showing the layers. Apparently, evidently this could just be all mixed up, like anything that's not a sauce, and that's also what's going to happen when you're going to serve it. But often resisting the urge to stir or to mix everything and just bring it unmixed is a really good thing to do, because you just see more of what's going on, and you get these contrasts.
And you get different experiences with every bite. So every bite is going to kind of be different, and in that sense, really exciting, because in one bite you might get potato and yogurt and then a little bit of tamarind, and the next bite you'll get coriander chutney, and the next bite you'll get all of the elements. So it's kind of just a very exciting way of eating.
I totally agree. And this is the fight that I have with my children all the time, because they always want to mix everything. You get an ice cream topping or something, the berries with the yogurt.
I don't know why that is, but it is what you want to do when you're a child.
This is so wrong. And Max said to me the other day, because I was giving him a lecture in the morning, how he got his yogurt with the granola and fruit, and he just mixed it up like it was a paste. And I said,
I lecture a 6-year-old, Yotam.
You know what he said to me? He said, "You know what? I'm not you."
That was exactly the thing to do. So is there anything in this apart from the yogurt itself? You've not got any other, no garlic, no salt, no anything?
Nothing else. Absolutely nothing else. And you're just going to want to push the yogurt to the edge, but not all the way to the edge. Also because this is quite a big platter, but it's always nice to leave a bit of a rim there, and then you just kind of spread it out nicely. And I'm going to put a little bit of the coriander salsa there, and I will leave also a little bit to spoon over. And this is really, you can really do it as you like. There's no right and wrong. But
someone has just asked Francis Hollington. It's an interesting question, actually. Is there do you think there's a difference between eating and cooking traditional recipes that have come down through generations, than to kind of making things that have come, that you've actually produced, that you've worked at, or have come from you fusing different elements together? Because I still am a big believer in kind of very traditional recipes. If Irish stew died out, I'd be really distraught.
Well, I think there's a sort of a time and place for both of them, and I love what can only be described as fusion, because no one's come up with a better term for it, and that's what I do most of the time. But I always go back to the classics that I love, and more often than not, I think, Francis, you're asking about the difference in eating and cooking. With classic recipes, I actually tend to go and eat them rather than cook them myself. When I'm cooking myself, I like to mix things up. When I'm desperate for that, fantastic yang noodles or a fantastic pasta with ragu, then I'll go to a place or a person that I know does that really well. More often than not, I'm not saying that I don't try them myself, but I think there's a time and place for.
And I think also that it depends on how, like when I publish recipes, it depends how much the audience it would be familiar with that thing. So something that, you know, they might have come across, never have come across. I feel like I should probably tell that story. Sorry, I'm just wiping my hand. Tell that story in a kind of an authentic way, and then things that they're more familiar with, it's kind of okay to play. So I think sometimes you do recipes as they should, as you learn them when you, let's say, traveled somewhere. Another time you play around, and there's kind of, like Ixta said, there's room for both. So you kind of spread this, and you want to leave
so
a
you
bit
can
of that
see the
yogurt,
contrast.
give it contrast, and I'm going to put a little bit of that coriander and chili sauce or chutney over that, not too much, and then a little bit more of that tamarind.
So you're creating layers of flavor here, building them up.
Yeah, and then some small onion slices. The onion you can slice by hand, or you can do it on a mandolin, which is good for if you want to get it really, really thin.
And then there's just the tamarind.
So I put some tamarind, and I'm going to put a little bit more. And then we've got the seeds as well.
And the green chili.
And this is
chili.
I mean, it's basically an Indian recipe, isn't it? That you've kind of slightly done different things to.
Yeah, it's basically an Indian recipe that's just done slightly different.
Slightly deconstructed.
It's inspired by Indian street food, where you get all those flavors, the chutney and the tamarind sauce, that you get quite a lot in India, on the street. And
wow.
There's so many flavors in this for such kind of a simple dish as well.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. It's a simple dish, but there's so much going on, which is exactly what...
I don't know whether anybody's actually read it at home or has cooked it, but it's Elena Volkova, I don't know where she's writing from. She would never think of serving roast potatoes in this way, but this is a fantastic idea.
And there's a little bit of oil, because oil makes everything look and taste so much better. And it just kind of stains the yogurt on the side, so you got these little pools of olive oil.
It's beautiful.
Sign of delicious.
Thank you so much. Thank you to both of you. That's the end of our festival. So thank you so much for being part of it. Thank you, Yotam and Ixta. Thank you all for watching, and have a lovely evening. Bye.